Gonna give you a review, gonna give you a story. So The Cell from 2000. Remember The Cell? A lot of people remember The Cell. A lot of people remember The Cell pretty fondly. From 2000, director Tarsem Singh. This is Arrow, by the way. Arrow Video is putting out The Cell as a 4K and Blu-ray set. I think it's also out as a Blu-ray set. The 4K set is the film, 2 versions of the film, and I'll get into the details. 2 versions of the film in 4K, a Blu-ray that's the exact same contents, and then a Blu-ray bonus disc that's a different version of the film and even more extras. So I saw this when it was new. I saw this at the Putnam Arts Lecture Hall at Keene State College in Keene, New Hampshire, which at the time, or at least when it was built, was a state-of-the-art facility that could do 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter, 70 millimeter. And this was in the days before digital, so they ran this in 35 millimeter, and everybody was talking about it. It was visually stunning. Everybody's like, oh my God, the visuals in this movie, the trailers, everybody was like, we've never seen anything like this before. So I went with a couple friends, and it was so incredibly loud that it was painful. And all I really took away from it was it looked interesting, but I was afraid I was going deaf. Like I was really worried while I was watching it that I was going to suffer hearing loss. It was distracting and almost painful. And for years, we referred to the projectionist who ran it that night as Deaf Dave, because we figured a friend of mine had known this person in the past as being in the same apartment building, and this person always played their stereo too loud. So we were like, this Dave, he plays the movies too loud. He can't hear well, so he cranks them up, or he just likes to play them too loud. Flash forward until this last year, a friend of mine who also experienced that screening is a projectionist at the American Cinematheque in LA. They are screening The Cell. Director Tarsem Singh comes into the booth, very, very nice man, very funny man, and asks that it be played very loudly. And my friend says, oh, I know all about how loud this movie can be played. I've been inflicting pain on people with this. I've been inflicting oral pain on people for this movie for decades, and they had a good laugh. So I take aback my original opinion that I'm sorry, Dave, if you're out there and you never heard anybody call you Deaf Dave, but I'm sorry we ever did, because it wasn't your fault. The director instructed that this movie be played loud. Now, the director is of Indian descent. I'm a big fan of Indian movies. I've come new to the world of Indian cinema, and every time I go to see an Indian movie, they're played incredibly loudly. Like, I literally have a pair of earplugs I bring to go to see Indian movies because they are just mastered loudly, and American cinemas, they don't turn them down for some reason. So it all connects now. I'm like, okay, he's used to a cinema that is intended to be played very loud, and he is instructing this film to be played very loud. So it's nobody's fault but the director, who by all accounts, and as is borne out on this disc, is a really cool and nice guy. So that's all to tell you that I'm approaching The Cell again after, dear God, 25 years for the first time, because I did not have a good memory of it. My memory of it was, it looks pretty, but there's not a lot going on in this movie. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to watch this movie where I can control the volume in the home, and I'm going to see what I think a quarter of a century later. Sometimes it's a really nice surprise to revisit things like this. My opinion didn't change. I still think this film visually is very impressive and very innovative and interesting, but I still feel like there's not a lot going on in it. Story goes a little something like this, 3 minutes into this review. Jennifer Lopez plays a psychiatrist, psychologist, scientist who works with, by the way, this film stars Jennifer Lopez, Vince Vaughn, Vincent D'Onofrio, Dylan Baker, and Marianne Jean-Baptiste, who's in an Oscar-nominated film currently. Baker and Baptiste, or Jean-Baptiste, are scientists, and they basically are able to guide Jennifer Lopez into the mind of other people to help fix their mind, or into the dreams of other people. So this movie is a lot like other movies that I've seen before. This movie is a lot like Dreamscape. This movie is a lot like Brainstorm, and that is mentioned in the extras by the screenwriter, that it was, inspired, or he'd seen these other films. So basically the story is that there is a serial killer out there portrayed by Vincent D'Onofrio. He has kidnapped a woman, and she is being held somewhere, and he has been mentally incapacitated or physically incapacitated. And Vince Vaughn as an FBI agent, wants to utilize this technique that Lopez uses to have her go into the mind of this serial killer and try to figure out where this woman is before she expires, due to his intention or due to however long she has left, being left alone somewhere because the guy isn't there to tend to her anymore. So it involves these just amazingly stunning visuals of the dream world, the imagination world, the unconscious world of at first it opens with her going into a little kid who's very withdrawn in his imaginary world, and then we go into this nightmare hellscape that the Vaughn, that the Vincent D'Onofrio serial killer has. So this film is presented in a couple versions. I'll give you the tech specs here. Disc 1 is the 4K. The Blu-ray is the same, so whatever I say with 4K goes for the Blu-ray. English 5.1 audio, English 2.1 audio, English SDH subtitles. Director's cut runs 109 minutes. Theatrical cut runs 107 minutes. The director's cut is mostly just more gruesome stuff than was allowed in the theatrical cut. And it looks phenomenal. The sound mix is, unfortunately, the way I watched it, and I believe I watched it English 2.0, but it might have been the 5.1. The sound fix is the normal kind of dialogue in the basement, music and effects super loud. I don't know if that's the dreaded, what we call the dreaded 5.1 mix for anybody who doesn't have a surround sound system, or if that is what the director intended, but just know that you might be riding the volume a little bit. I switched to 2.0 from 5.1, and that seemed to help a little bit. There's a lot of use of CGI and like mind-bending visuals, some of which holds up, most of which holds up, but occasionally there's early CGI that's just a little doesn't look good now. I'm of the opinion that a lot of CGI never looked good, but some of it to our eye now doesn't look as good. It still strikes me as more style over substance. And in the extras, they really kind of lash out against people who have said that over the years, but it really feels like that to me. It's really more about the visual experience, and just know that going in. There is a story. The story does get resolved to some satisfaction or not, but it is about people. It does have characters, but mostly really it's all about how cool it looks. It really feels like the first film by somebody who was doing commercials and music videos, which is what this was. And the director has gone on to do other things that are similarly visually pretty impressive from what I hear. The cast is all good, but they're pretty grim-faced and emotionless for the most part. It's one of those things where I say, I'm sure it was mind-blowing if you saw it when you were young and you hadn't seen the idea of this before. It's before Brainstorm, it's before Dreamscape, it's before Inception, it's before all... I'm sorry. If you hadn't seen Brainstorm and Dreamscape before, I'm sure this was very impressive, and this came before Inception. So it does feel like a mix of those other films and Silence of the Lambs to a degree. The 4K looks great. Special features on that 4K disc. We get a new critic commentary by Alexandra Heller-Nicholas and Jacob Nelson. We get a new screenwriter commentary along with film critic Kay Lynch and screenwriter Mark Prodosevich, and that's really, they're all interesting. Commentary by Tarsem Singh, who's really cool and honest and defensive, but kind of fun. Archive production team commentary from the original DVD release, which was like a pretty deluxe DVD in its day, with Paul Loffer, director of photography, production designer Tom Lauren, makeup supervisor Michelle Burke, costume designer April Napier, visual effects supervisor Kevin Todd Haug, and composer Howard Shore. You get Projection of the Mind's Eye, which is a new feature-length interview with director Tarsem Singh. That's 89 minutes, and he's very cool and funny in that. Cusses a blue streak. New interview with director of photography Paul Loffer, that's 43 minutes. The Blu-ray disc, as I said, is identical to the 4K. The Blu-ray bonus disc features a different version of the cell that nobody has ever seen. It was a previously unseen alternate version presented in 178. The original theatrical release was 239. And the 178 basically just opens up the top and the bottom. It's not pan and scan. With alternate color grading, it gives it an entirely different look than the version that appears everywhere else. It's from a 2K master created by the director of photography. It's 107 minutes, and it looks good. I didn't watch the entire thing again, but it looked pretty good from what I saw. Just a different, if you want to watch it and have it fill your screen and have it look a little bit different, it's a way to freshen up the viewing for you in the future. That's presented in 5.1 and 2.0 with, again, English SDH subtitles. Extras on that bonus disc are Paul Loffer Illuminates, and that's him explaining how this alternate version came to be. And at one point, they actually show you the digital videotape of that he's kept for all these years. I guess it was prepared at the time that the film originally was coming to video. It's 11 minutes long. Art is Where You Find It, visual essay by film scholar Alexandra Heller-Nicholas, taking a look at how director Tarsem Singh engages with modern and classical art in the cell. That's 13 minutes. The costuming auteur, film critic Abby Bender takes a look at the work of costume designer Eiko Ishoka and her work on The Cell. That's 11 minutes. Style as Substance, Reflection on Tarsem, archive featurette featuring interviews with cast and crew. That's 12 minutes. That's like an EPK from when it originally was being made and coming out. Deleted scenes with optional director commentary. That's 20 minutes, and it's 8 deleted scenes. Special effects. This is interesting. 6 multi-angle vignettes. Originally, they utilized, remember DVDs? They would have an angle button. The whole idea at the time was maybe you could do multiple angles for concerts or live stuff or adult stuff, and that's something that Blu-rays don't do anymore. So they figured out a way to represent this for this, and it's a bunch of different segments. They total 68 minutes. That is somebody from the visual effects team talking about how they did something, how they conceived it, how they executed it, and then what would have been the other 2 angles are like off to the side in little boxes, and they all play simultaneously. So it's a bummer you can't do what you originally could do, which was to make those things full screen, but it's a way to pour it over and save something that was on the DVD in a way that works now. You get two theatrical trailers. The US trailer, that's 2.5 minutes. That doesn't look anywhere near as good as the movie does visually. The international trailer, which is strangely 4:3, that's 1.5 minutes. And then you get an image gallery that is, excuse me, get choked up when I talk about image galleries, 340 images long. So this is totally loaded. If you love The Cell, definitive release of The Cell, available Blu-ray or 4K. So if you get the version that's the 4K, it comes with the Blu-ray anyway. So if you don't have 4K, you buy that and insurance for your future. And if you just have a Blu-ray, you can get a version that's just that. And it comes with a bunch. I don't get the physical copies of this with all the extras, but it comes with a lot of cool booklets and tuck-ins and art cards and covers and all that stuff. So available now on Blu-ray. A 25th anniversary edition on 4K and Blu-ray from director Tarsem Singh is The Cell.